Oh, hi. I'm Josh Claris. I am Eliza's uncle. I was a principal in the New York City public school system, founded my own charter school, and I am now a doctoral student at Harvard University in educational leadership. So my understanding of IDEA in its broad sense is that it's the federal government's attempt to make sure that children, kindergarten through 12th grade children who have some type of disability, learning or physical, get the equal access to educational services as all other students. For me, particularly as a school principal, worked with this regulation in many different ways, most particularly under the concept of what you would call inclusion, to make sure that students could really come to a typical district public school, to come to school with the kids that they grow up with, and their blocks and their neighborhoods, have the same teachers, be in the same schools, and mostly then be there with them and get the services that they require, whether or not they needed some speech and language help, whether or not they needed occupational therapy, whether or not they had a learning disability and had to get specialized reading services. All of that, in my understanding, is provided under the regulations of IDEA. There are more extreme cases where there are kids with access issues, with severe physical disabilities, severe learning disabilities, can be dealing with traumatic brain injury or other types of more serious injuries that kind of push the envelope of what our typical public schools are able to manage. And again, families who have become sophisticated in knowing the regulation from the federal government, IDEA, have been able to utilize that law to push district public schools to be more open, to be more inclusive, to make sure that their child, if they are struggling with these more significant disabilities, have access to the local neighborhood public school that's right around the corner from where they live. So my opinion on IDEA is actually fairly simple and straightforward, even though I understand that there's a lot of complexities to the regulation. I have always been a huge advocate of it. I think that any way that we can make our public schools more inclusive is really important. You go back to the federal government's work on making sure that schools were integrated under at least racial lines, this idea that separate but equal doesn't work. And I am a strong, strong believer that separate is not equal. So IDEA provides equal opportunities for students with disabilities to get access in the same facilities, in the same environment, with the same teachers as their peers. To me, that's extraordinary and necessary. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult to figure out how to do. It's very difficult to kind of expand the bandwidth of teachers to figure out how to work with children with all different types of learning styles and learning differences within our classroom, but it's incredibly important. And I think that there's a lot of energy to help teachers figure out how to do it, and that's necessary. It's also empowered a lot of families who've had children with disabilities to feel as if they should be more included into the public school system. And again, to me, that's just vital. There have been so many families that have dealt with some, fairly complicated and sophisticated disabilities for their children who felt ostracized and marginalized by the system. Kids with autistic children, or families with autistic children, families with children who had serious physical disabilities, that just felt left out. And for them to feel included is just an incredibly important thing for our society in general to allow to happen. My understanding right now is that the biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues, on top of just being complicated for schools to manage children who are so different, is it's a major financial burden on school districts. It's very expensive to basically provide a lot of the assistive technologies for schools, and I think that the federal government in particular has to start managing that. So the federal government needs to start to support schools and how they implement the services for these students by basically funding the mandates. The federal government is very good at what is called non-funded mandates, basically telling people what to do but not providing service, not providing the money to do it. And I do believe that the federal government has the funds and should provide the funds.
A teacher here at Staples High School, as well as a Staples grad, so I've been here a very long time. And I was asked to speak a little bit about IDEA, and really pretty much, it's the Individuals with Disability Act, and how it's really, how it has a positive effect on actually the Staples students who either have come up with an existing individual education plan, which is an IEP, which is a legal document that teachers and the school has to follow. It's designed for a particular student who has been diagnosed with a disability which impacts their ability to really be successful in school with that individual special education services. So in my opinion, I think it's been a very, very useful tool and helpful tool, not only for school systems, but for teachers, for parents, and for students, of course, because it really clearly outlines what the actual disability area is in writing, what are some of the long-term and short-term goals. Goals are really done on an annual basis, so we want to write goals. I think when it comes to, when you talk about interest groups for students, individuals with disabilities, I mean, of course, there are all of these Families and Advocates Partnership for Education. You've got United Cerebral Palsy organizations, the National Down Syndrome Congress. All of those are very, very important interest groups in getting some of those students with disabilities to receive the public education that they really deserve. But also, when it comes down to it, in my opinion, I think that the interest groups that get the most work done are the parents. Parents work very hard to fight for their children and do a nice job seeking the supports from the school systems that they feel that they need to be successful. So I give them a lot of credit too.